Monday morning at Brighton Academy International High School began with the first rays of sunlight slipping through the large library windows, painting warm streaks across the wooden floor. Tall bookshelves, rising all the way to the ceiling, spanned the corners of the room, their hardcover volumes neatly lined up, inviting students to explore. In the air-conditioned silence, only the soft rustle of turning pages broke the stillness. Kate Bennett, slender but resolute, was wholly absorbed in a history of Western political thought, reading with absolute concentration. Kate has lived with her grandmother ever since her father, Thomas Bennett, died in a mysterious car accident 5 years ago. Whenever his name comes up, tears brim in her eyes, yet she has never let her emotions show. Margaret, grandmother, guardian, and mother figure throughout Kate's childhood, always reassures her, whenever you feel tired, come back to the library. Books will give you the strength to carry on. Today's library essentials, besides her history text, were her laptop, notebook, and a few pastries her grandmother had packed. Across the long table by the window sat Charles Carter, the top student in their grade, famed for acing every exam. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, revealing his angular, cold-set features. Few knew that Charles harbored a hidden darkness, childhood shadows cast by a familial rift that still tightened his chest. His father, Richard Carter, had once worked alongside Kate's father on a children's mental health charity, but some grievous quarrel had torn them apart. Charles avoided family talk, immersing himself in academics and keeping social contact just enough to avoid the weird loner label. Fate placed Kate and Charles just a few chairs apart. The library seemed suddenly brighter. Kate frowned as a shaft of light hit her book, then glanced to her right at the tall figure hunched over a laptop. Charles, too, looked up in surprise when he noticed her face turned toward him. She cleared her throat and offered a shy smile. "Sorry. The light was bothering me a bit." Charles nodded coolly and slid his desk lamp into a gentler angle. "Better." His voice was warm yet cautious. Kate felt a surge of gratitude. Since the start of senior year, Kate had mostly worked with the girls in her class, and Charles was known as an untouchable ideal. No one had ever exchanged more than a word with him. Yet this small gesture, this shared glance, felt like the sun breaking through clouds. Once the light was right, Kate bowed her head back to her book, but her mind raced. Why does he matter so much to me? She sighed, jotted her notes on 18th century Enlightenment thought, her pen looping evenly across the paper. Charles, meanwhile, resumed typing his research report, only to find his words on the screen blurred by thoughts of her quiet confidence, her deep knowledge. Why did a simple act of moving a lamp unsettle him so? He remembered her flawless A+ grades in history and literature. Can't lose focus now, he told himself. AP exams are coming up. Suddenly his phone rang, his mother, Sophia Carter. He frowned at the screen and answered, "Yes, Mom?" Her voice was calm but anxious. "Charles, are you at the library? Please stay away from that Bennett accident research group. Lynn, your father's research assistant, called. They're gathering materials on Thomas Bennett's case." He swallowed. "I'm just here for a group study session. I'm not involved." "Be careful," she warned. "Don't let anyone connect you to our family." "I understand," he promised, heart pounding. "I can't let Kate discover anything." Kate looked up, catching Charles's gaze. Her heart skipped. What did he just say? She asked herself, but shook it off and buried her nose in her book again. So many buried doubts about her father's death she hadn't shared with anyone. Classes stretched into mid-morning. Kate joined an art history discussion while Charles worked with his social science group on their final report. Even seated across the room, they felt each other's presence. Kate jumped at the sound of Charles asking the professor, "Sir, I'm wondering about using Western sources to analyze Confucian philosophy." His calm, confident voice made everyone sit up and listen. At the final bell, Kate hurried to gather her things, only to feel someone gently tug her sleeve. "Kate." Charles stood by her desk, eyes serious. "I'm curious why you've spent so much time researching the Bennett accident. That was years ago." Kate froze. She'd never told anyone of her determination to uncover her father's cause of death. She inhaled, keeping her voice level. "Oh, I'm mainly interested in the social history angle. My father was a journalist on traffic safety. I just want to continue his work." Charles met her gaze, tension melting into understanding. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "If you need materials or help, I'm happy to assist. I'm good at this subject too." For the first time, Kate heard genuine warmth in his offer. Her heart fluttered. "Thank you." They walked out across the sunlit quad together, the late afternoon light turning the red maples golden against the green grass. Side by side, still a respectful distance apart, their hearts both turned toward what lay ahead, a budding friendship and the secrets about to surface. The first day of the new term at Brighton Academy began with the interdisciplinary History Social Studies project class, where student teams were assigned a 10-week research topic. When Ms. Rutherford announced the results, Kate Bennett's hand trembled as she opened her slip of paper, Traffic Safety and Urban Development in 21st Century Europe. To her surprise, Charles Carter held the identical topic. Their eyes met. Kate managed a polite, nervous smile. Charles merely narrowed his eyes, hiding a spark of pleasure. That very afternoon, they convened in the library to begin collaborating. Kate's workspace was meticulously arranged, laptop open, presentation notes laid out, a handful of scholarly journals at hand. Charles placed a freshly printed copy of European Urban Planning Review beside Kate's materials. The air was awkward at first, and they exchanged only perfunctory greetings. "Charles, I think we should start with post-2000 urbanization trends." Kate agreed. "Here are the traffic accident statistics from 2010 to 2020. From these dry numbers they wove a thesis on how road network expansion had affected accident rates. Every time Kate posed a question, Charles responded with deep, data-driven insight. Her careful organization impressed him. In turn, Kate saw that beneath his cold demeanor lay a genuine passion for scholarly rigor. Before they left, Kate suggested they reconvene on the weekend to work on the visual elements. Charles agreed readily. "Saturday afternoons are quiet here. I'll bring art supplies, you prepare the city maps," Kate replied, and they set the time. That Saturday morning, Kate arrived at the group study area by the music practice rooms. Higher year students were practicing instruments nearby, but far enough away not to disturb them. She unpacked her canvas tote, watercolors, brushes, a drawing board, then discreetly withdrew a small notebook filled with her private research on her father's accident, tucking it beneath her art supplies. Charles appeared moments later in a dark green cardigan, laptop satchel slung over his shoulder. He smiled as he sat down. "You look extra cheerful today." Kate blushed. "Thanks, you're looking sharp too." They got to work. Charles hooked his laptop to a portable screen, displaying a detailed map of London's road network, which they'd use to compare with the accident site. Kate opened her notebook to the entry labeled Maple and Rose intersection, 2019, and read aloud. "Speed limit 50 km per hour, heavy commercial traffic at night." Charles frowned. "Why focus on that junction? Is it really on topic?" Kate's voice was steady. "I believe suburban accident zones still fall under urban safety measures. I also found a vintage newspaper clipping about my father's crash." She snapped the notebook shut. Charles's gaze sharpened, but instead of pressing her, he steered them back to the slide design. "How will you illustrate the traffic flow?" he asked. Kate dipped her brush into cerulean watercolor, sketching the main roads, roundabout, and camera placements. Her precise diagrams elicited Charles's quiet admiration. At midday they took a break at the campus coffee kiosk, practically deserted after morning lessons. Kate ordered an almond latte, Charles chose a straight espresso. When their drinks arrived, Kate teased, "I've tried every flavor here, but your espresso seems sweeter." Charles sipped, voice unsteady with amusement, "Not as sweet as the way you're looking at me." They laughed, then drifted into personal chat, Kate's weekend watercolor class, Charles's love of jazz clubs in London. With every shared story, they saw each other less as classmates and more as kindred spirits. Kate confided, "Painting helps me stay balanced. After Dad died, I felt lost until I found color." Her tone softened with sadness. Charles looked at her intently, then asked quietly, "Are you okay?" She nodded, returning the question, "And you? Is all this schoolwork overwhelming?" He half smiled, nearly whispering, "My father, Richard Carter, drives me hard, always comparing my grades to his colleagues' children. Sometimes it feels suffocating. I just want to follow my own passions." Kate's heart went out to him. "We all bear our own burdens. You don't have to be alone, I'm here if you ever need to talk." By mid-afternoon they returned to the library to polish their outline. As Kate headed toward the transport safety section, she stumbled upon a dusty pile of old newspapers recounting the night of October 15, 2019, the night her father died. One headline read, "Carter Logistics truck seen near Maple and Rose intersection." Her pulse quickened. She snapped photos of the article and discreetly slipped a USB drive into her pocket, pretending to retrieve project files. When she returned, Charles looked up anxiously. "Are you all right? Your hand was shaking." "Just cold," she lied, and he draped his scarf over her shoulders. As closing time approached, Charles began packing. He paused, picking up an architecture journal from Kate's stack titled Smart Traffic, Exposure Cameras and Legal Liability. He flipped it open and met her gaze. "Charles, you really dig deep into this, don't you? Concerned with corporate responsibility?" Kate's cheeks warmed. "Just a personal interest." He offered gently, "If you want an expert's view, I can introduce you to Mark, he's a city traffic engineer." She shook her head. "Thank you, but I'd rather keep digging myself." That evening Kate returned to her grandmother's house. Over nourishing chicken porridge, Mrs. Margaret asked, "How was your project work today?" Kate smiled tiredly. "Great presentation, but I'm still unsettled by some details." Margaret patted her hand, "I'm always here if you need to talk." Later, in her apartment, Charles returned to his study and stared at the corkboard covered with articles and photos about the Bennett accident. He remembered admiring Thomas Bennett at a 2018 charity gala, and the rift that followed. Should he protect his family's secrets, or help the girl who had captured his heart? He sighed, glancing at his phone's unread message from Kate. "Thank you for today. Good night." That night, neither of them slept. In Mrs. Margaret's spare room, Kate studied the data she'd salvaged, license plate numbers, timestamps, GPS logs, and resolved, "I will press on, no matter how hard it gets." In the Carter household, Charles clenched his fists, wrestling with guilt and loyalty. "I must stand by Kate. Even if it means confronting my own father." Outside, London's city lights shimmered beneath drifting clouds, as two determined hearts drew ever closer, bound by hope, love, and the promise of justice. Night had long fallen over London, and distant streetlights cast pale golden streaks across the rain-slick pavement. Kate Bennett's hooded trench coat shielded her shoulder-length brown hair from the drizzle as she stared at the Maple and Rose intersection, the very spot where her father, Thomas Bennett, had met his end 5 years ago. Her heart pounded in time with the USB drive in her pocket, which contained the Carter Logistics dossier and the time-stamped photos of the truck's passage. She stepped carefully through puddles, her leather boots gripping the cobblestones as memories surged, blaring horns, the glare of headlights, witnesses' screams. Kate inhaled the chill night air to steady herself. Her phone vibrated, a message from grandmother Margaret read, "You were at the scene? Be careful, Cold nights can make you ill. I'm fine, I just need to see it for myself, Kate texted back. She slipped onto the cracked curb, where the painted lines were blurred by rainwater and only headlights' reflections broke the darkness. On her screen, she brought up the image of the Carter Logistics license plate flashing 2015, October 15, 2019. With a tap, the company's GPS records appeared. The depot lay 12 kilometers away from here. The driver's official statement said he left the yard at 5:30 p.m., yet the toll booth camera logged the same vehicle at 8:10 p.m., just 5 minutes before the crash. A shiver ran down Kate's spine. Did someone divert that truck deliberately through here? The wind stung her face. Kate hurried into the Rose and Maple Cafe on the corner, taking refuge among a handful of late-night patrons nursing hot drinks. She ordered a steaming ginger tea and settled by the window, staring out at the deserted intersection, mind in turmoil. As she took her first sip, footsteps tapped on the wooden floor behind her. "Mr. Carter?" came Charles's slightly breathless voice. Kate looked up to see him enter, his charcoal coat still dotted with raindrops. His eyes swept the room before resting on her. "Kate," he said, sliding into the chair opposite. The usual coolness on his face was gone, replaced by concern. "I've been looking everywhere for you." She managed a tight smile. "I wanted to document the scene myself. It's quiet out here tonight." She passed him her phone to show the GPS data screenshot and the time-stamped image. Charles studied them, face darkening. "I checked. The official story says the truck returned to the depot by 6 p.m., but the GPS record shows it later." He met her gaze. "Why are you digging so deeply into this?" Kate drew a steady breath. "My father was just a local journalist investigating traffic conditions when he died. There are too many unanswered questions for me to accept it as a simple accident." Charles nodded. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. But my family has reasons for keeping it under wraps." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "If you need legal support, documents, or witnesses, I'll do everything I can to help." Warmth bloomed in Kate's chest. Genuine understanding was rare. She smiled, real this time. "Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it more than you know." The next day, Kate and Charles traveled to the Thames Riverside home of Daniel Moore, a retired traffic control officer who had investigated the 2019 crash. His weathered cottage sat in a quiet stretch along the river bank. On the porch, his shock of white hair caught the soft daylight, and his kind eyes held a trace of sorrow. "Daniel?" Charles greeted softly. The old man looked up and smiled. "Ah, Charles Carter, long time. And you must be Kate Bennett, Thomas Bennett's daughter?" Kate nodded and gave a respectful bow. "Mr. Moore, I'm sorry for your loss." He waved her off. "Don't be so formal. Thomas was a good man. I regret how quickly that case was closed." They sat in his cozy sitting room around a teak tea table. Mr. Moore spread out a creased incident map, pointing to the spot in front of the Maple and Rose store. There were 3 traffic cameras here, but only one footage survived. The other 2 were under maintenance that very night. He glanced at Charles. "Strange, isn't it, that Carter Logistics claimed no involvement, yet the original logs tell a different story?" Charles frowned. "Do you have any notes on the truck's plate or the people involved?" Mr. Moore flipped through a brittle file. "Here. The record lists plate 72B3456, your family's truck. And a news wire once reported, the owner denies the vehicle was at the scene. I flagged that internally, but pressure from the haulage company shut the case." Kate's voice caught. "So, my father was deliberately targeted?" Mr. Moore's eyes filled. "I believe many investigators were told to stay silent. Internal memos show the file was sealed." Kate's hand trembled as she retrieved her USB. "Could I have a copy of your scanned archives, please?" Surprised, he softened. "Of course. Charles, Miss Bennett, I'll send you everything I've got, but be cautious. Once the truth emerges, those in power may fight back." On the drive home, Charles steered slowly along the river road beneath a misty drizzle. He held the files from Mr. Moore in his lap, guilt and dread warring in his eyes. Deep down, he knew his father, Richard Carter, lay at the heart of this conspiracy, yet he had never dared confront that grim reality. He glanced at Kate in the passenger seat, her face alight with hope and determination. If he stood with her, he'd be opposing his own family. His voice shook as he asked, "Kate, if you learn my father's involved, what will you do?" She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I don't want to believe it, but I have to seek the truth for my father. And I trust you'll stand by me." Charles's throat tightened. I'm afraid of losing everything. But I can't leave you alone." They clasped hands as cars passed along the Thames in the dim glow of lamplight. Though danger lay ahead, their shared resolve flickered like a flame in the mist. That night, Kate tossed and turned. A soft knock on her door revealed grandmother Margaret. "Are you all right, dear?" Kate sat up, eyes moist. "I met Mr. Moore. I have the evidence now." Margaret sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Good. I'm proud of you." Kate gazed at her father's photograph on the bedside table, the image of Thomas guiding little Kate's first steps. She vowed, "I will not let those in power evade justice. I will clear his name." Next door, Charles clutched the folder from Mr. Moore, tears in his eyes. "Father, I know I must face you." Torn between protecting family and championing truth, he turned on his lamp and checked his phone, a single message from Kate, "Thank you. See you soon." Outside, London slumbered under a fine rain, streetlights dancing like shards of broken mirror. Two young souls, each bearing a private burden, readied themselves for a perilous quest for justice, one that would test their courage, their love, and the strength of their bond. After meeting with Mr. Moore, Charles Carter spent the day tormented by conflicting loyalties. He could no longer avoid the truth: his father, Richard Carter, was directly implicated in Thomas Bennett's death. As night fell, and Kensington's streets lay hushed under a thin mist, Charles resolved to confront his father. At 9 p.m., he drove to the Carter family's grand villa. Normally bustling, the courtyard was now eerily silent, the engine's hum echoing among Doric columns framing the entrance. He grabbed the USB stick from his pocket and pressed the doorbell. Moments later, Sophia Carter, elegant in an ivory gown, opened the door. Her gaze was cold. "Charles? Late," she remarked. "I need to see Father," he said, stepping past her into the marble-floored foyer. In the drawing room's warm glow, Richard Carter sat behind a mahogany desk strewn with papers and a half-empty tumbler of whiskey. He looked up, startled. "Charles?" he said. "I'm not here about business," Charles replied, voice steady but eyes fierce. He held out the USB. "This contains proof that Carter Logistics trucks passed the Maple and Rose intersection at 8:10 p.m. on October 15, 2019. You claimed the vehicle was back at the depot by 6 p.m. Richard's face hardened. "I simply asked the driver to avoid a decommissioned toll booth. GPS errors happen." Charles laughed bitterly. 2 traffic cameras were disabled that night. "That isn't coincidence." He stepped forward. "Why did you orchestrate this?" Richard's composure cracked. "Don't be ridiculous. I didn't kill anyone." Charles pressed on. "You staged that accident to silence my father. You let him crash, then covered it up." He thrust the USB toward his father. "Explain." Richard turned away, staring out at the reflection of city lights on the window. At last he confessed, voice hushed. "Thomas Bennett publicly shamed Carter Logistics for unsafe practices. He humiliated me in front of my peers, and in my rage, I wanted revenge. I never meant to kill him. Just scare him. Charles's heart pounded. You admit you endangered him, and then silence the witnesses. Richard's shoulders slumped. I panicked when he fell and hit his head. I had my people close the case, blamed his state of intoxication. Tears pooled in his eyes. I'm sorry, but our name, our legacy, couldn't survive a scandal. Charles shook with anguish. You robbed a man and his family of justice. You must confess. Richard pleaded, if I confess, Carter Logistics collapses. Everyone suffers. I can't protect you anymore, Charles said softly. I stand with Kate. I'm filing the truth tomorrow. He turned and walked away, leaving his father amid the dim glow of crystal chandeliers. Every echo of his footsteps felt like the end of one life and the start of another. That night, Charles drafted a brief message. Kate, I have revealed everything to my father. Please meet me at 7 p.m. tomorrow in the old library, by the window. Across town, Kate lay awake. Grandmother Margaret cracked her door. Still up? Kate sat up, eyes red. Charles confronted his father. He's going to tell me everything tomorrow. Margaret squeezed her hand. Truth may hurt, but justice is worth the pain. Outside, London's lights shimmered through a veil of drizzle. Two young hearts, bound by secrets and courage, braced for the trial that would test their love, and set them on the path to justice. Dawn broke on Charles with pale gold across his desk. He stared at the note reading Meet Kate, 7 p.m., Brighton Library, then steeled himself with a deep breath. Today the truth must come into the light. By 8 a.m., Brighton Academy buzzed with returning students. In History Social Studies, Kate sat at her window desk, rehearsing her presentation while wondering if Charles would keep his promise. When Ms. Rutherford called on the Bennett Carter team to lead the class, Kate's voice trembled, but quickly steadied as she and Charles delivered their traffic safety analysis. Their peers were impressed by the seamless integration of statistical data and policy recommendations. After class, Kate's phone dinged with Charles's text. I'll see you tonight. He spent the afternoon in Bloomsbury, meeting Harriet Lawson, a family friend and veteran civil attorney. In a cozy cafe beside Harriet's office, Charles laid out the USB evidence. Harriet studied it gravely. You have GPS logs, Mr. Moore's testimony, and the traffic camera discrepancy, strong grounds for both civil and criminal action. But the Carter name carries weight. We must proceed discreetly. Charles nodded. I want Kate protected. Can you represent her directly? Absolutely, Harriet assured him. I'll draft the complaint and liaise with the Crown Prosecution Service. Everything stays confidential until we file. Meanwhile, Kate returned to her grandmother's home. Over ginger tea, Mrs. Margaret reminded her, truth brings hardship, but you're not alone. Kate looked at her father's framed photo and whispered, I'll make this right. At 7 p.m., Kate slipped into the library, spotting Charles already seated at their window table with 2 steaming mugs of cocoa. He stood and offered her one. After a quiet moment, Charles said, I told my father everything. Harriet's on board. Tomorrow we file both the civil suit against Carter Logistics and open a criminal investigation. Kate's eyes glistened with determination. I want justice, for my dad, and for us. But I also worry, will this break us? He reached for her hand. I'm sorry I kept secrets. But I love you, and I choose you over everything else. Kate squeezed his hand. I love you, too. We'll face this side by side. Charles then slid 2 documents across the table, confidentiality and representation agreements prepared by Harriet. Kate reviewed them, then signed both. Charles signed his copy. They exchanged the papers and shared a relieved smile. As the clock chimed 9:30 p.m., Kate stood at the library exit. Charles walked her to the gate under the amber glow of street lamps. He hugged her from behind and murmured, "You are not alone." She leaned into him, heart full, "And neither are you." Above them, the London night sky drifted with clouds silvered by moonlight. Though the road ahead was fraught with legal battles and emotional trials, Kate and Charles knew they would endure, guided by truth, fortified by love, and driven by a shared promise to honor Thomas Bennett's memory. The first day after Kate and Charles signed their engagement letters with attorney Harriet Lawson was full of both excitement and anxiety. Harriet had asked to meet Kate at 10 a.m. in her cozy office on the second floor of Regency Chambers on Bloomsbury Street. Charles escorted Kate to the building, holding her hand tightly and reminding her, "I'll wait in the hallway so you don't have to go in alone." Harriet's office was warm and inviting, its shelves lined with the latest law volumes. Dressed elegantly in a gray suit, Harriet greeted them with a smile. "Good morning, Ms. Bennett, Mr. Carter. We have important paperwork to arrange today." She spread out a flowchart of the legal process on her wooden desk. "First," she explained, "we'll file the civil claim petition, then the criminal investigation request. Both must be accompanied by supporting evidence. The GPS data from Carter Logistics showing anomalies. Mr. Daniel Moore's testimony about the disabled cameras. A copy of the original accident scene report. Internal memoranda from Carter Logistics. I've already prepared the forms, we just need your signatures and fingerprints, Ms. Bennett and Mr. Carter." Kate and Charles signed the documents and pressed their thumbs into ink pads, then handed the originals back to Harriet. Her assistant, Mr. Clark, whisked them away to scan and notarize copies, which he then delivered to the court near Covent Garden. At 11 a.m., Kate and Harriet went to the Royal Courts of Justice, the most important civil court in London. Harriet strode confidently in her black barrister's gown through the iron gates and led Kate to the filing chamber. Kate's heart pounded as they approached the intake window. When the clerk called their names, Mr. Clark placed the thick folder on the counter. The clerk examined it and said, "Civil claim petition, Bennett vs. Carter Logistics, evidence complete. Interim filing fee of £500 received. Preliminary hearing set for July 15, 2025. Kate exhaled in relief and whispered, "Thank you," to Wallace Clark. He nodded with an encouraging smile. Less than 2 hours after Kate filed the petition, her phone buzzed with an email from Fletcher and Smythe LLP, representing Carter Logistics. It read, "Dear Ms. Bennett, on behalf of Carter Logistics, we strongly advise you to withdraw your civil claim petition. If you do not, the company will countersue you for defamation and damage to reputation. Legal fees and damages could total up to £50,000. Sincerely, Edward Fletcher, Esquire." Kate pressed the phone to her chest, eyes glistening. Grandmother Margaret soothed her, "It's only a scare tactic. Don't be afraid." Kate nodded firmly, "I know. I won't back down." Over the next week, Kate, Harriet, and Charles met constantly to strategize. Harriet prepared and filed a criminal investigation request, outlining a possible charge of deliberate causing of a fatal accident, and submitted it to the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS. She also reached out to 2 more witnesses, a bus driver who had seen the truck flash its lights as it sped through the intersection moments before the crash, and a toll booth attendant who confirmed the camera's lost signal on the night of the accident. Meanwhile, Charles went to the police archives at Tower Bridge and retrieved the original 2019 investigation logbook, handwritten records of times, witness statements, and supervisory instructions. He photocopied the entire book and delivered it to Harriet. Though their days were consumed by legal jargon and paperwork, every evening Kate and Charles stole a few moments together. They met at their old table in the library, where the afternoon sun still filtered through the window. Kate carried her law texts, Charles brought his laptop loaded with the original files. "You are overworking yourself," he murmured, rubbing her shoulder. His warm sigh chased away her tension. I'm fine, she replied with a faint smile. I just want to move things along. I worry more about you getting worn out. He returned her smile. I may be tired because of you, but I'm happy to be. They clasped hands and felt their heartbeats sync, love and justice beating as one. Midweek, Kate received a second email from Fletcher and Smythe. Regarding your criminal investigation request, we have sent an internal memo to the CPS urging them to drop the investigation due to insufficient evidence and contradictory testimonies. Also, Carter Logistics will sue you for interfering with legitimate business operations and damaging the company's reputation. Kate's hand trembled as she showed the email to Harriet. The attorney paused, then said steadily, "It's just a diversion tactic. We'll respond with even stronger evidence. I will summon the Carter Logistics driver, the one they pressured into silence, to testify." Kate took a steadying breath. "I believe in justice." That night, Kate arrived home later than usual. Grandmother Margaret had prepared hot porridge. They ate in silence, the only sound the steam rising from their bowls. Margaret asked gently, "Are you all right?" Kate nodded. "I know Harriet is working tirelessly. Charles is exhausted too. I worry he'll reach his limit." Margaret took Kate's hand in hers. "Love gives you strength. You and Charles are bringing hope to justice. Don't falter." Tears shone in Kate's eyes. "I feel so lucky to have him by my side. I am never alone." That weekend, Kate, Charles, and Harriet met again at the Crown Court to prepare for the July 15 civil hearing. Harriet stressed, "You both must attend, bring proper accreditation, and stay composed. Most importantly, highlight the technical evidence, GPS data, camera records, and witness testimony, and the original logbook." Charles quietly took Kate's hand. "Are you tired? I'll stand with you all the way." Kate smiled and squeezed his hand. "I'm ready." As the moonlight drifted through the silvered London window, it fell on Kate's face like a gentle caress, and on Charles, standing firm beside her, ready to weather any storm. Their legal journey was about them and for their father's memory, and for the love blossoming amid those cold case files. A gale-less London morning greeted the July 15 hearing at the Royal Courts of Justice. Hallway 13A overflowed with law students, curious onlookers, and reporters. Kate Bennett climbed the steps, clutching the dossier Harriet had prepared. Beside her, Charles Carter stood tall in a dark blue suit, his face a mask of determination and nerves. Inside the cavernous courtroom, seats were arranged in two wings. On the left, the plaintiff, Kate Bennett, with Harriet Lawson; on the right, Carter Logistics and their counsel from Fletcher and Smythe LLP. At the front sat Lady Judge Palmer on the bench, her black robe and silver hair lending her an air of steely authority. As the clerk opened the court, everyone rose. Lady Judge Palmer rapped her gavel. "Judge Palmer, Bennett vs. Carter Logistics, civil suit, will now proceed. Counsel, please state appearances and summarize your claims." Harriet rose confidently. "Harriet, Your Honor, I am Harriet Lawson for Ms. Kate Bennett, the plaintiff. Also present is Mr. Charles Carter. We seek damages of £250,000 for emotional and reputational harm, and a public apology from Carter Logistics, for their deliberate actions causing the death of Mr. Thomas Bennett." Lady Judge Palmer nodded and turned to Edward Fletcher. "Fletcher, Your Honor, Edward Fletcher for Carter Logistics. We deny all allegations. The plaintiff's evidence is flawed, GPS data is unreliable, Mr. Moore's testimony lacks corroboration, and the traffic cameras were not under our client's control. We ask for dismissal." The court then moved to evidence. Harriet called Charles Carter as her first witness. Charles approached the stand, shoulders square, and said, "Charles, Your Honor, I am Charles Carter, data manager at Carter Logistics. I extracted the GPS logs for October 15, 2019, which show truck plate 72B3456 diverting off the highway at 7:55 p.m., passing Maple and Rose at 8:10 p.m., then returning to the depot at 8:30 p.m. Harriet displayed a slide showing the route map and timestamps. Lady Judge Palmer studied it before addressing Fletcher. Judge, your side's response to this data? Fletcher, Your Honor, these logs were produced by the defendant's own child, not an independent authority. Judge, Mr. Carter's logs have been notarized and bear Ms. Lawson's certification. The court will consider their authenticity at closing. Next, Harriet called Mr. Daniel Moore, the retired traffic officer. He described, Moore, I arrived at the scene at 8:15 p.m. Both intersection cameras were offline. Standard maintenance occurs at midnight or early morning, not during peak hours. When I inquired, I was told emergency maintenance, with no formal notice. Lady Judge Palmer asked Fletcher if he wished to cross-examine. Fletcher, Mr. Moore retired in 2020, memories fade, and the cameras belong to local authorities. Harriet rebutted. Harriet, internal Carter logistics memos instructing camera shutdown, signed by Mr. Richard Carter, are in evidence. A murmur swept the courtroom. Lady Judge Palmer rapped for order and said, Judge, the court provisionally admits the internal memo. The signatures will undergo verification. Fletcher objected to its admissibility. Harriet pointed out the notarized original and the high authenticity handwriting report. By late afternoon, Lady Judge Palmer announced she would recognize two further pieces of evidence, the toll booth's record of the truck's passage and an internal audio recording of Richard Carter ordering the cameras disabled. Fletcher protested, but Harriet produced an independent acoustic analysis verifying the familiar voice with 98% certainty. Judge, evidence admitted. Cross-argument will be scheduled later. The hearing adjourned around 5 p.m. In the hallway, Kate and Charles confided in Harriet. Kate, they challenged every point so quickly. Harriet, they are desperate. But with GPS logs, Mr. Moore's testimony, and the voice analysis, the court has the facts. Signature verification and independent GPS review are next. Kate exhaled, resolve shining in her eyes. Justice is on our side. Charles squeezed her hand. You are never alone. Outside, Richard Carter watched via livestream, shoulders trembling. Soon he would have to answer for his choices. Their civil case wound toward a decisive outcome, but the criminal trial loomed next. Yet in Kate and Charles's hearts, love and justice burned brighter than any lingering shadow. Chapter 8: A Breakthrough in the Criminal Investigation. On August 1, exactly 2 weeks after their first CPS interview, London awoke to a crisp autumn chill. Fresh from their civil court victory, Kate and Charles now faced the criminal arena. That morning they received formal summonses from the Crown Prosecution Service. From CPS Criminal Division. To Ms. Kate Bennett. Criminal investigation request into deliberate causing of death. Please appear on January 8 at 10 a.m., CPS HQ, 72 New Street, 3rd floor. With ID and copies of all original evidence. Charles placed a hand gently on Kate's shoulder. You ready? Kate touched her dossier with quiet confidence. Harriet says this is the key step toward prosecution. He drew in a steady breath. We'll face it together. You're not alone. At 9:30 a.m. they met Harriet in her Regency Chambers office. She reviewed security procedures. Meet Detective Inspector Mark Sullivan in Room 3C, Criminal Division. Provide sworn statements on record. CPS may subpoena Richard Carter and additional witnesses. All testimony must be truthful and complete. Handing them color-printed binders and a USB of the original logbook scans, she reminded them, be there by 9:55 a.m. Security checks will delay late arrivals. At 10:05 a.m., An elevator disgorged them into a stark neon hallway. They followed signs to Criminal Division. At the door of room 3C stood Detective Inspector Sullivan, tall, steely, with salt and pepper hair. He shook their hands. "Sullivan, good morning, Ms. Bennett, Mr. Carter. I'm D.I. Sullivan, assigned to investigate the fatal accident claim." Kate nodded, somewhat breathless. "Thank you for seeing us." He led them into a small conference room, its walls lined with enlarged maps of the crash site, GPS charts, and camera footage stills. Sullivan turned to Harriet. "Ms. Lawson, we'll begin with your client's statement." Harriet replied, "Yes, Ms. Bennett and Mr. Carter will now provide sworn testimony." He began with Kate. "Sullivan, Ms. Bennett, please recount how you discovered the GPS data and initiated the criminal request." Kate stood, voice steady. "Kate, in June, during the civil investigation, I obtained the October 15, 2019 GPS logs from Carter Logistics, which placed truck 72B3456 at the Maple and Rose intersection at the crash time, contradicting initial statements. I compared this with Mr. Moore's testimony and the toll booth records, then asked for a criminal probe." Sullivan noted diligently and asked, "Sullivan, what supporting documents do you have?" Harriet passed him the USB. Kate added, "Kate, this contains the digitized logbook pages, GPS files, internal memos signed by Richard Carter, and the recorded instructions to disable the cameras." Sullivan adjusted his glasses. "Excellent. We will use these to summon relevant parties." He then invited Charles. "Sullivan, Mr. Carter, please explain your role in extracting and preserving the GPS data." Charles rose and spoke with calm precision. "Charles, as data manager for Carter Logistics, I accessed the company's control system logs for October 15, 2019. Suspecting discrepancies, I exported the complete log file, which I then retained and forwarded to Ms. Lawson." Sullivan nodded. "That establishes chain of custody. Thank you." After their statements, Sullivan assured them. "Sullivan, we will subpoena Richard Carter for his testimony and refer his signed memo to our handwriting experts for verification." Kate's eyes flickered with concern. "What if he tries to evade?" Sullivan smiled kindly. "We have statutory powers to compel attendance. No one stands above the law." Outside the CPS building, Kate and Charles sat on the stone steps, decompressing in the cool air. Kate, exhaling, "I never expected this to move so fast. I'm excited and terrified." Charles, "Me too. I worry about my father. Whether he'll show up." Kate took his hand. "I trust the system. If everything is fair, he must answer." Charles gazed ahead. "My family's legacy may crumble, but I'm ready to stand by you." Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, Sophia Carter awoke to the news that her son had been summoned by CPS. She stared at her phone, hands trembling. "Charles. What has happened?" After hearing his recap, her face went pale. "A criminal investigation. This is more serious than I feared. Richard won't handle this well." She called an urgent family meeting. Upstairs, she found Richard slumped at his desk, eyes closed. "Richard, we must face this," she whispered. He did not open his eyes. "It was inevitable," he groaned. "Perhaps confession is the only way." Sophia clutched his shoulder. "We cannot just give up. We have to fight." He only sighed. I owe the truth now." That night, Kate returned to her grandmother's cozy parlor, placing a hand on her father's portrait. "Kate, softly, I've come so far, Dad. I will bring justice for you." Nearby, Charles called Harriet. "We need another CPS meeting to firm up the summons. I fear my father may dodge it." Harriet reassured him, "Don't worry. The subpoena has already been issued. He must comply." Charles pressed a hand to his heart. "I promise you, I'll stand by you no matter what. Beneath London's streetlights, Kate and Charles remain two steadfast beacons, love guiding them, justice lighting their way, ready for the next chapter of their fight. On August 20th, 2 weeks after their CPS interview, London entered early autumn, the air cool and tinged with promise. Kate Bennett awoke to sunlight slicing through her curtains, casting pale gold streaks across her room. Today she and Harriet were to attend a meeting with Lady Judge Palmer to request a public criminal prosecution hearing. At her dressing table, Kate examined her reflection. She pinned back her brown hair in a neat chignon and applied a light rose lipstick, a shield of confidence. Grandmother Margaret knocked softly and entered with a steaming mug of ginger tea. "Are you ready, dear?" Margaret asked. Kate offered a small, nervous smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." Margaret patted her hand. "You've done all you can. I'm so proud of you." At 9 a.m., Kate arrived at Harriet's Regency Chambers office. They took a cab back to CPS on New Street, heading to room 4B to file the formal prosecution request, along with the judge's subpoena for Richard Carter. Harriet laid the thick folder before D.I. Sullivan. "We've finalized the prosecution request, complete with forensic medical reports, witness statements, and internal records." Sullivan reviewed the documents, nodded. "I will forward this to CPS leadership. If approved, we'll schedule a public criminal hearing for late September." Kate's pulse quickened. This was the breakthrough she had worked so hard for. That afternoon, Kate sat her final exam in history and social studies. Though prepared, she still broke into a sweat in the exam hall. She bit her lip, glanced at her notes. "Stay focused. Charles and Harriet have our back." In the room next door, Charles tackled his advanced mathematics test, his mind drifting to his promise to Kate. He sharpened his pencil and pressed on, silently praying for a fair trial. Afterward, they met on the quad, autumn leaves swirling around them, and exchanged determined smiles. Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, Sophia Carter received the formal criminal summons for her husband. Her hands shook as she read, "Richard Carter is to appear on September 28, 9 a.m., Old Bailey, Crown vs. Carter." Sophia faltered, tears welling. "Richard? This goes far beyond what I imagined." Richard did not answer, guilt weighed heavily on his bowed shoulders. Sophia clutched the summons. "We cannot lose everything." At sunset, Kate and Charles reunited at the old library corner, where afternoon light still streamed in. Kate leaned on Charles's strong shoulder, exhaustion etched on her face. "Kate," voice trembling, "I'm scared. What if they acquit him?" Charles, holding her, "I believe in the system. We've presented the truth. Whatever happens, I'm with you." Kate lifted her head, tears in her eyes. "I trust you. You're the only one I can count on." Charles brushed a tear from her cheek. "And you are my reason to fight." That weekend, CPS issued their second courtroom summons. Court, Old Bailey Criminal Court, Courtroom 2, date, September 28, 9 a.m. Case, Crown vs. Richard Carter. Kate handed the summons to Charles, their hands trembling but resolute. For the days leading up to the trial, they gathered more evidence, meeting the forensic pathologist who performed Thomas Bennett's autopsy, securing the medical examiner's detailed report, re-interviewing the bus driver and toll attendant for signed statements. Support poured in from friends and fellow advocates. Each evening, they practiced 10-minute mindfulness sessions, Kate learning to calm her anxieties, Charles learning to express his fears instead of hiding them. Their bond deepened with every shared breath. On the eve of the trial, Kate lay awake, finalizing her witness list. Grandmother Margaret knocked on the door and entered quietly. "Margaret, you should get some rest, tomorrow will be a long day." Kate, eyes brimming, "I'm so afraid." Margaret drew her into a hug. "Justice demands courage. You've come this far. I know you'll do your best. Kate nodded, resting her head on Margaret's shoulder. At dawn, Kate woke with a calm resolve. Though the night was long, she found peace in the support around her. Drawing in a deep breath of the autumn air, she whispered, "Tomorrow, justice will speak." On September 28 at dawn, the Old Bailey Criminal Court thrummed with anticipation. Hundreds lined the corridors, journalists, public observers, and friends of Kate Bennett. Inside courtroom 2, seats faced one another. On the prosecution side, CPS led by Harriet Lawson and DI Mark Sullivan. On the defense side, Richard Carter flanked by Edward Fletcher and his junior counsel. At the back, a trolley bore the voluminous prosecution exhibits. In the gallery, Charles Carter and Kate Bennett sat hand in hand. At 9 a.m., Lady Judge Palmer entered to hushed respect. She tapped her gavel. "Judge, Crown vs. Richard Carter, trial for willful fatal injury, now in session. Prosecution, please proceed." Harriet rose, advancing to the lectern. "Harriet, Your Honor, I represent the Crown. We accuse Mr. Richard Carter of ordering the disabling of traffic cameras and routing a heavy truck through the Maple and Rose intersection on October 15, 2019, causing the death of Mr. Thomas Bennett. We will present GPS data, internal memos, witness testimony, and an incriminating audio recording." She cited the relevant statute under the Criminal Justice Act 1967 permitting technical evidence and voice recordings. Defense counsel Fletcher stood. "Fletcher, Your Honor, Mr. Carter denies any intent to kill. The evidence was obtained by third parties and is technically flawed. We will show that the incident was a traffic misfortune, not a premeditated act." The prosecution called Mr. Daniel Moore first. He took the stand in his plain clothes, voice unwavering. "Moore, on October 15 at approximately 8:15 p.m., I observed that cameras A and B at Maple and Rose were offline. Routine maintenance never occurs during evening peak hours. When I inquired, I was told emergency repairs. I suspected undue influence." Judge Palmer asked him to confirm who managed those cameras. "Moore, Urban Watch Limited under contract to Carter Logistics." Fletcher leapt up. "Fletcher, why did you not pursue Urban Watch's liability?" "Moore, I requested, but was told the matter was closed by Carter Logistics management." Next, Charles Carter took the stand. "Charles, I am the data officer at Carter Logistics. On that date, I discovered the GPS log showing the truck bore off route at 7:55 p.m., passed the intersection at 8:10 p.m., and returned at 8:30 p.m. I preserved the original file with system timestamps before informing my father." Fletcher cross-examined. "Fletcher, why did you not immediately report this to the police?" "Charles, I feared my father would deny it. I needed to gather all corroborating evidence first." Judge Palmer allowed the testimony, noting its clarity. Harriet then introduced the internal memos signed by Richard Carter. "Harriet, Your Honor, here is the memo instructing shutdown of cameras A and B from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on October 15, signed R. Carter." On the courtroom screen, the signature was enlarged. Fletcher objected, demanding independent verification. "Fletcher, this is merely a scanned image. We require an independent handwriting analysis." Harriet held up a notarized original and the expert report. "Harriet, the Royal Handwriting Bureau confirms 99.2% authenticity." Judge Palmer nodded, admitting the memo as evidence. Finally, Richard Carter himself took the stand. His once proud bearing was now haggard and subdued. "Judge, Mr. Carter, did you order the cameras shut down?" He swallowed hard, voice shaky. "Carter, yes, I asked they be disabled to avoid recording. I did not intend anyone to be harmed." "Judge, you understand disabling safety cameras during peak hours incurs grave risks?" "Carter, I never foresaw a fatality." Fletcher urged a lenient view. Fletcher, this was a management lapse, not intent to kill. Mr. Carter contributed greatly to his community and has cooperated fully. Harriet countered. Harriet, but he knowingly removed safety measures, then rerouted a heavy vehicle into a busy intersection. Judge Palmer rapped her gavel. Judge, the court will recess 30 minutes for deliberation on guilt. Then we will resume for sentencing considerations. At 8:45 a.m. on October 5, 1 week after the verdict hearing, a packed courtroom 3 at Old Bailey prepared for sentencing. The gallery thronged with CPS representatives, defense counsel, media, and families from both sides. Richard Carter sat beside Fletcher, his silvering hair thinner, his gaze hollow yet defiant. Lady Judge Palmer entered and rapped her gavel. Judge, sentencing in Crown vs. Richard Carter is now in session. Prosecution counsel Harriet Lawson approached. Harriet, Your Honor, given Mr. Carter's deliberate disabling of safety cameras and the fatal consequences, we seek a custodial term of at least 10 years under the Criminal Justice Act 1967, plus a ban on corporate management for 10 years post-release. She presented forensic injury reports, a psychological profile of remorse, and a victim impact statement from Margaret Bennett. A significant sentence is necessary to uphold the sanctity of life. Defense counsel Fletcher then spoke. Fletcher, Your Honor, Mr. Carter has admitted his actions and shown genuine remorse. He is 65 with health issues and has a record of community service. We ask the court to consider a suspended or reduced sentence, not exceeding 5 years, allowing him to make amends. Next, Lady Judge Palmer called Margaret Bennett to the stand for a victim impact statement. She rose, voice strong despite tears. Margaret, my son, Thomas, was a dedicated journalist who championed road safety. His death broke our family. Mr. Carter's actions stole not only his life but our faith in justice. I urge the court, impose a sentence that deters those who would endanger others for profit. Her words echoed through the hushed courtroom. Lady Judge Palmer signaled a brief recess. When the court reconvened, she pronounced, Judge, having weighed aggravating factors, premeditation and fatal outcome, and mitigating factors, genuine remorse, age, health, I sentence Mr. Richard Carter to 8 years imprisonment. He is disqualified from corporate management for 15 years and must pay £300,000 in compensation to the Bennett family within 6 months. A single, emphatic rap of the gavel ended the hearing. Some in the gallery applauded quietly, others sat solemnly. Kate wept in relief, and Charles held her close. Outside in the autumn sunlight, Kate turned to Charles. Kate, it's over. Tears in his eyes, Charles replied. Charles, I'm proud of you, and of us. Kate nodded. Though we cannot bring him back, justice has been served. On the afternoon of the sentencing, Charles and his mother, Sophia Carter, visited Richard Carter at HMP Belmarsh. Richard's face was drawn as he rose to greet them. Richard, I accept the punishment. You both deserved better. Charles took his father's hand. Charles, you protected the company's reputation but destroyed ours. I hope you can atone by helping others. Richard's eyes glistened. I will try. Thank you for not abandoning me. Sophia embraced him. We'll face this together. By November, London's streets lay quiet under early winter's sky. Kate and Charles returned to Brighton Academy as second-year law students. They co-founded the Brighton Smart Traffic Initiative, combining Kate's legal acumen and Charles's technical expertise. IoT speed sensors at high-risk intersections. Transparent live feed cameras publicly monitored. A citizen reporting app for real-time safety alerts. On a crisp afternoon atop the law building, Charles addressed their team. Charles, I'll lead the technical integration. Kate, you'll draft the local ordinance. Kate smiled, and we'll invite grandmother Margaret to advise our community outreach. Their shared laughter echoed across the rooftop, love and justice ever intertwined. In spring, Kate and Charles invited Sophia and the newly recovered Richard to join a community advisory board. Sophia wiped away tears as she greeted them. "Sophia, I'm proud of you both, for turning tragedy into positive change." Kate took her mother-in-law's hand. "We move forward together." Richard added quietly, "I'm grateful they gave me a second chance." On July graduation day at Brighton Academy, Kate and Charles donned caps and gowns as Bachelor of Laws graduates. They accepted the Excellence in Public Service Award for their project's impact. When their names were called, they walked the stage, hearts brimming with hope. That evening, under the pink glow of sunset, Charles knelt before Kate and proposed. "Charles, Kate Bennett, you've been my inspiration and my partner in justice. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy in her eyes, Kate whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Amid cheers and confetti, they embraced, an ending to their struggle and a beginning of a shared life. 5 years on, their Brighton traffic safety model had cut fatal accidents by 35% across London, sparing countless families. Kate and Charles married in a small riverside chapel, attended by Margaret, Harriet, D.I. Sullivan, and even Sophia and Richard, now united in service. In early autumn, beneath blooming blossoms by the Thames, the couple strolled with their daughter, Lily. Lily, tugging her mother's hand, "Mommy, why did the police wake Daddy at 3 a.m.? Kate, smiling, "Because your dad and I were installing new safety cameras, sweetheart. We look out for everyone." Charles kissed Lily's head, "And we'll always protect our family." As petals drifted around them, Kate and Charles walked on, proof that love and justice, once intertwined, can light the darkest paths and build a brighter future.